Today, we're diving deep into one of the most important migrations in history, the Hijra. But we're not just going to look at dates and facts. No, we're going to uncover the human story behind it. A story of unbelievable sacrifice, nail-biting rescues, and a community built on pure conviction.
So let's just start with a really big question, something that people have wrestled with forever. What is the price of belief? I mean, really, for the very first Muslims, this was not some philosophical idea. It was a question they had to answer every single day, with their lives, their money, and their freedom.
Our story kicks off in Mecca. Now, for the first followers of Islam, this wasn't the city of peaceful pilgrimage we think of today. It had become a pressure cooker of persecution. So when the call finally came to migrate to the safety of Medina, their oppressors, the Quraysh tribe, started to get really desperate to stop them.
To stop this mass departure, the Quraysh decided to use a pretty brutal strategy. See, they couldn't just win with words. They had to physically stop people from walking out. And their method of choice? Imprisonment.
The cruelty here was, well, it was the whole point. This wasn't just about locking people up. Men like Ayyash and Hisham ibn al-As were caught, they were chained, and they were left in enclosures with no roof. Just try to imagine that for a second. Day after day under that scorching Arabian sun, with absolutely no shade, no escape. This was a punishment designed not just to hold your body, but to completely break your spirit.
So their strategy had two really clear goals. First, obviously, to physically stop people from leaving. But second, and maybe even more important, it was to create a terrifying public spectacle. The message they were sending was crystal clear. If you even think about leaving, this is what's waiting for you. It was a campaign of fear, plain and simple.
But even when things seemed that bleak, hope wasn't totally lost. And that brings us to our next chapter, the price of freedom. Because for every lock someone makes, there's always someone else figuring out how to pick it. But that freedom, man, it was going to come at a huge cost. Word of these prisoners eventually got back to Medina, and a mission was launched. A companion was sent right back into the lion's den. Can you imagine the tension? Sneaking through the moonlit alleys of Mecca, having to rely on nothing but your wits to find where Ayyash and Hisham were being held? This was an incredibly daring, high-stakes rescue mission to bring their brothers home. So while some were freed by sheer bravery, others had to buy their freedom. And that brings us to the incredible story of Suhaib ar-Rumi. Now, this guy wasn't from Mecca. He had arrived as a slave, earned his freedom, and through pure hustle and skill became a super successful wealthy businessman. But to the nobles of Quraysh, he was still an outsider. And when he decided to migrate, oh, they were furious. How dare this foreigner choose his new faith over the city that, as they saw it, had made him rich? So as Suhaib tried to ride out of Mecca, the nobles stopped him. They blocked his path, totally determined to keep him, and more importantly his money, in the city. Cornered and faced with a crazy choice, Suhaib makes him an offer that just left them stunned. He looks right at them and asks this simple but absolutely monumental question.
And you know what? The Quraysh agreed. And so, Suhaib ar-Rumi, the self-made man, turned his back on his entire life's work. He left every single coin, every bolt of fabric, everything he owned, right there in a pile in the dust. He traded his entire worldly fortune for the only thing that mattered more, the freedom to live by his beliefs.
Now, if you're just looking at it from a worldly point of view, Suhaib had lost everything. He arrived to Medina with literally nothing to his name. But the story doesn't end there, because now we have to talk about what was really gained in what looked like a terrible deal. When news of Suhaib's sacrifice reached the Prophet Muhammad in Medina, his reaction just completely changed the meaning of the whole event. He didn't offer his sympathy for the financial loss. No. Instead, he just declared with joy, Suhaib has profited. Suhaib has profited. He wasn't seeing the transaction in terms of gold, but in terms of eternal worth. This personal sacrifice was so huge, so significant, that it was actually immortalized in the Quran. A verse was revealed that talks about someone who would sell himself, seeking the pleasure of Allah. Suhaib had traded something temporary for something eternal, and that transaction was recognized by God himself.
So Suhaib and the other migrants from Mecca, who came to be known as the Muhaajiroon, they all arrived in Medina with next to nothing. They left it all behind, but what they found waiting for them was something so much more valuable than anything they'd lost.
They found a community built on a totally revolutionary idea, ukhuwah. This is this core Islamic concept of a spiritual brotherhood, a bond of faith that's meant to be stronger than tribe, stronger than status,
stronger than where you come from. It was going to be the bedrock of their entire new society.
And look, this wasn't just a nice theory, they put it into practice immediately and radically. The people of Medina, who became known as the Ansaar, which means the helpers, they didn't just offer thoughts and prayers, they opened their doors, their homes, their hearts. They shared literally everything they had.
And the details are what make this so real. The family of Umar, who would become a major leader, found a place to stay in the house of Mubashir. Suhaib, the man who arrived with nothing, was welcomed into the home of Kubayb. They even set up special houses, like the bachelor's house, just to make sure that no one, absolutely no one, was left out in the cold. It was a citywide effort of just pure compassion.
And so, from those shackles under the muck and sun, a brand new dawn rose, right here, in Medina, a city of light, a sanctuary. And its foundations weren't just made of mud and brick, they were built on the incredible sacrifices of the Muhaajiroon and the unbelievable generosity of the Ansaar.
All of this leaves us with one final thought to chew on. The story of the Hijra shows us a community that was literally founded on selfless sacrifice and this deep, profound brotherhood. So it kind of forces us to ask ourselves, what are the foundations our own communities are built on today? And what price are we willing to pay for what we truly believe in?